Shout out to Ring RQ, Julius, you legend. We're going to do a joint interview, yeah? Yeah, we'll do a joint interview, Julius. Thanks for the support. You're a legend. From your girls, Raven and Ellie.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
We'll start with this. Some disappointing news I'm sure most of you have heard by now. Apparently, Ellie Scotney versus Shernika Johnson for the IBF Super Bantamweight title has been removed from the upcoming Katie Taylor versus Chantal Cameron fight at the request of Chantal Cameron. According to Ellie Scotney, I am incredibly disappointed to say that I am now hearing I will be removed from the May 20th card in Dublin due to Chantal Cameron and her management insisting to my promoter that I'm not allowed to be on the undercard because of who trains me. This is despite having been on 2 cards together before with no problems whatsoever. After my world title fight had been announced on a huge night globally for women's boxing, my dream is now being taken away from me by a fellow fighter dictating terms and making unreasonable demands to my promoter. I cannot describe how heartbroken I am. How could Chantal Cameron, who's not even the A-side fighter in this upcoming fight, how could she have the power to dictate those kinds of terms to Ellie Scotney, to Shernika Johnson, to Eddie Hearn? I mean, what's the threat? That if they don't remove Ellie Scotney from the show, she won't go through with her own fight against Katie? Is that the ultimatum? Shernika Johnson herself, the reigning IBF champion, said on her social media, "The politics in boxing is actually bullshit. Why should myself or Ellie lose the opportunity to fight a great fight on such an incredible fight card for women's boxing? The work that goes into starting a camp mentally and physically and the preparations that have already gone in, and have that taken away because of some behind-the-scenes drama that has nothing to do with the actual fighters themselves. As the champion, me and my team agreed and went back and forth with negotiations to defend my title in Dublin on the Katie Taylor versus Chantal Cameron undercard on neutral territory. There was nothing in the contract stating that due to behind-the-scenes drama, this defense will be moved to a smaller show in Ellie's hometown in the UK. This is unfair, and as the champion, I deserve better. I did not hesitate to give Ellie the opportunity to challenge for the title on this big card. I shouldn't be punished for this." While some of what Shernika Johnson said is true, this isn't a voluntary title defense, you understand. Ellie Scotney is her mandatory challenger. She has to fight her. If she doesn't, the blue belt is forfeit. When she says that she didn't hesitate to give Ellie the opportunity, she doesn't have much of a choice. And that's why I'm confident, if nothing else, the fight will get moved, it will get rescheduled, and Shernika, she's under orders to comply. Lou DiBella, who promotes Shernika Johnson in this part of the world, stated, "Shernika Johnson is a world champion. She's training for a defense of her title that was specifically negotiated to be on the Taylor versus Cameron card in Dublin on neutral territory. She signed her bout agreement. As DiBella Entertainment did a POS, it's patently unfair to Shernika Johnson and Ellie Scotney." Most people don't know what the nature of Chantal Cameron's beef is. Her beef isn't with Shernika Johnson or Ellie Scotney. Her beef is with Shane McGuigan, who trains Ellie Scotney, dating back to approximately 4, close to 5 years ago.
Just to announce that I've decided to part from Cyclone Promotions and the McGuigans. Basically, I don't know where my boxing career is heading now because it's going for legal action, so I'm restricted in what I can actually say. But basically, I thought I was going to be leaving amicable, as we had a meeting and they know the distress they caused me and how emotional they made me feel in my whole career by deliberately making me feel isolated, humiliated and just deflated. And they had no time for a female boxer. I was supposed to be training 5 times a week. I never trained 5 times a week. I did all my training in Northampton. I was in London training 3 times a week. My last fight was 4-week camp, and a lot of people noticed that my performance was terrible and not up to scratch how I usually would perform. And that's one of the reasons, is the stress I've been going through in that team, chasing money.
That video's from February of 2019. This is before Chantal Cameron signed to Matchroom. She was between promotional outfits, between trainers. She alleged that she was mistreated at the McGuigan gym, though she didn't get into full details as to what the mistreatment encompassed due to it being a legal matter between herself and the McGuigans, Barry McGuigan and Shane McGuigan. The most she stated was that at least at that time, Shane McGuigan wasn't much too interested in training a female boxer. He must have had a change of heart in recent memory, as now he trains both Ellie Scotney and Carolyn Dubois. Needless to say, the relationship between Chantal and Shane, it didn't end amicably. Reigning IVF bantamweight champion Ebony Bridges stated, "I highly doubt Chantal Cameron gives a fuck about Ellie Scotney on her undercard, especially not because she cared before. She's fighting for undisputed against Katie Taylor. What's Ellie to her? Definitely more to the story. Don't be so fast to judge with only hearing one side. Doesn't make sense. That's all I'm gonna say." To which Sky Nicholson replied, "Whatever is going on, the girls don't deserve to miss out on this opportunity. I hope there can be a resolve." My thoughts. Only Chantal Cameron and the McGuigans know how bad things got between them. Only Chantal Cameron knows why she would so decide to have Ellie Scotney removed on the premise she don't want Shane McGuigan around for her big night, her big fight. Only she knows that, but here's what I know. She's lost a lot of fans behind this. Backlash has already started. People are already asking, why should Ellie Scotney be caught in the crossfire of Chantal and Shane's beef? And how is it that Chantal Cameron, who's not the A-side fighter, not the Katie Taylor, how is it that she has the power to have an entire fight removed from the show? What's she doing? Is she threatening to walk? Would she throw her big opportunity away so that Ellie don't get to fight on her show? Rather, to put distance between herself and Shane McGuigan, I should say, since her beef is with Shane more than Ellie. Only they know what's really at the heart of the matter. But what I know, and from what I can see, there may have been those in England who had a rooting interest in Chantal Cameron winning that fight in Ireland against Katie Taylor, the pride of Ireland. But a lot of that support's gone now. She sticks to her guns and she goes through with this, and Ellie don't get to fight on that show. They could always move it to Wood versus Lara 2, which is a week later. They could do that. But Wood versus Lara 2 don't mean to women's boxing what Katie Taylor versus Chantal Cameron means to women's boxing. And Wood versus Lara, comparatively, is a smaller show. This is Katie Taylor's big homecoming party, her homecoming fight. They could always move Scotney versus Johnson to another show, but it would still be a missed opportunity in some ways for Ellie to be able to fight for a title in front of that many people, effectively become a champion if she can win, and they're gonna hold Chantal Cameron's feet to the fire for that. They're gonna blame her. It's being perceived as catty and petty. In the absence of actual details, what specifically is Chantal Cameron's rift with Shane McGuigan? What is it exactly? Most people agree that Ellie Scotney shouldn't be robbed of an opportunity as a result of that. You used to have fought on the same cards before. What's so different about things now? That now you can threaten to walk because you're in the main event? Is that it? That you can jeopardize the whole show if you don't get your way? Well, all I can tell you is a lot of people aren't going to like that. A lot of people don't like that. Chantal Cameron may have her reasons, but it's costed her a lot of support going into this thing. Make of that what you will. Men's flyweight news. Some disappointing developments according to reigning IBF champion Sonny Edwards, who stated, "Back to the drawing board. And less than 24 hours after saying this, I'm told no to the fight." What fight? The Benavidez fight. A day or so ago, Sonny Edwards took to his social media and stated he accepted his side of things to fight Benavidez next. Let's see who's really about what. And according to Sonny, it seems like the guys on the other side are not as receptive as he is. I don't really think we can question Sonny's commitment towards doing these fights. You know, Sonny, he left Frank Warren well over a year ago, jumped into bed with Probellum, but Probellum is now defunct. And he had the option of going back to Old Fish Eyes Frank Warren, seeing about doing an Artem Delakian unification match. He could have done that. He could have took his business elsewhere. He could have took his business over to Sky Sports and Boxer. They need fighters. They need champions. But he didn't go over there. He went to Matchroom. Because the reigning WBC flyweight champion is over there at Matchroom. Julio Cesar Martinez. They have unfinished business, as well as Jesse Bam Rodriguez, who's going to be in action this Saturday for what is the vacant WBO title in the men's flyweight division. That's why Sonny went over there. He went over there to make the big fights. The biggest fights you can hope to make in the men's flyweight division. Not just any old unification match. Not just an Artem Delakian fight. Artem Delakian, this division's reigning WBA champion, who was last in action on a Queensbury Promotions show some months ago. Some months later, if it was just about getting a unification match, Sonny could have went over there, fought that guy. But he doesn't just want to unify. He doesn't just want a unification match. He wants a big fight. And compared to that fight, a Bam Rodriguez fight, a Julio Cesar Martinez fight, Those are bigger fights and bigger unification matches than that one is. Sonny Edwards continued, so you come to flyweight to fight me, then choose a vacant title instead, then your coach tells us you're moving back up to super flyweight next. But I'm not avoided.
Makes a valid point.
If time proves Sonny Edwards right, beyond this weekend's fight, he decides to move back up to super flyweight after moving down to flyweight for this weekend's fight, who could he be pursuing? What fight could he be looking for that's a bigger and better fight than this fight? And the only fight that comes to mind is a Juan Francisco Estrada fight.
It's gotta be it.
Could be a Roman Gonzalez fight, could be a Chocolatito fight, but it's my understanding that Chocolatito and Bam Rodriguez, they have a very good relationship. They have no intention of facing each other, though when you think about it, if he's going back up to super flyweight, it's got to be for a big fight. It's got to be for a somebody, and those are two of the somebodies at super flyweight, Gallo Estrada and Chocolatito.
We've got to get Bam Rodriguez's side of the story.
Because this is only one side of it, Sonny's side of it, though I reiterate, I have no reason to question Sonny Edwards' commitment towards making these big fights because he went as far as signing to Matchroom. He had other options. He could have went to Queensberry. He could have went to Boxer.
Instead, he went to Matchroom, and I'm going to assume he went to Matchroom for a reason. That's where Bam Rodriguez fights. That's where Julio Cesar Martinez fights. He didn't end up there by accident.
So is Bam Rodriguez ducking Sonny Edwards? Is he avoiding a fight with him? And if he is avoiding a fight with him or putting it off, however you want to frame it, what's he putting it off to do?
What if it's to fight Gallo Estrada? Is that still a duck?
Would you guys out there still classify it as one if Bam Rodriguez were putting a Sonny Edwards fight on the back burner for a fight with that guy who still is WBC champion in the men's super flyweight division? Would that still be a duck?
Let's not count our chickens before they're hatched, because before it becomes about Sonny Edwards or Gallo Estrada or anyone else, Bam has to win this weekend's fight.
Christian Gonzalez Hernandez, who sports a professional record of 15 wins with 1 loss, no draws,
5 knockouts.
coming off 2 knockout wins, 2 consecutive knockout wins in his last 2 fights. He's got to beat that guy first.
He does.
Before it becomes about Sonny or before it becomes about Gallo, he's got to beat that guy first. It's going to be a busy weekend of action. Bam Rodriguez is going to be in action on DAZN. Shakur Stevenson is going to be in action on ESPN, and Sebastian Fundora, he's going to be fighting on Showtime all this weekend.
There's a lot going on.
A lot is happening, and even more is yet to come. Will Bam Rodriguez face backlash if he skips out on Sonny after becoming a 2-division champion? Should he win this weekend and pick up the WBO title at flyweight, will he be the subject of criticism for bailing on Sonny Edwards?
I'm telling you, it depends. It all depends on who he fights next, who he fights beyond this weekend's fight.
And super middleweight news, Oscar De La Hoya said after the John Ryder tune-up fight, he being Canelo Alvarez, he has to fight the big boys. He has to fight David Benavidez and Dimitri Bivol.
And even though Oscar's not wrong, that is what's on the table for Canelo. I hardly think these comments are coming from an objective place.
An unbiased one. It's going to be great, De La Hoya said of Alvarez's homecoming fight in an interview with FightHype.com. I think Canelo going back to his hometown after, 12 years? It's great. He's going to have, a tune-up fight with Ryder, and then he has to fight the big boys, Benavidez, and a rematch with Bivol. There's other fighters there. I'm not sure exactly what weight he's going to stay in. I'm not his promoter. I'm not the one, guiding his career. But if it was up to me, we would set up a plan to really cement his legacy, because these last fights he's going to have in these last years in boxing, he should make them worthwhile and really build his legacy to become one of the best.
He already is one of the best. If he retired here today, he'd be a first ballot Hall of Famer, the first undisputed super middleweight champion.
Not just Mexico's first, the first of any kind. Oscar continued, the reason why a lot of people think he's slowing down is because Bivol made him look slow, but I don't think Canelo's slowing down, De La Hoya said. I would make Benavidez versus Canelo next because styles make fights. Benavidez will clash with him, and who knows, whoever lands the first punch wins. It's those types of fights that build your legacy. It's those types of fights that people say, you know what? I respect you. So if I was his promoter, absolutely we would be going in with the best.
I have to agree there as well. If it was up to me, he'd be fighting David Benavidez after John Ryder, not Dimitri.
Said that many times. Just fight the best, De La Hoya said when asked to give some advice to Alvarez. Avenge the loss to Bivol. Nothing's impossible, but it's difficult. Bivol has a style that is not good for Canelo. Bivol is light on his feet. Canelo is very heavy on his feet. That could be a lot of problems for him in the future, but if you try, there's no knocking you, as long as you try. say, I think he can put that Bivol rematch on the back burner.
I agree with Oscar. I think David Benavidez should be next.
You can run, but you can't hide. People want that fight. Everywhere you go, they see Canelo, they ask him about the Mexican Monster. Everywhere I go, they ask me about Canelo. They want to see that fight. So that name of David Benavidez, he's not going to be able to go to sleep until he fights David Benavidez. And that's a little thing that he just needs to take care of in order to make history. And if he doesn't do that, there's always going to be that doubt.
While Benavidez Sr. is still propagating that gimmick that his son is somehow a Mexican monster, I maintain my original position. His son should be the next guy Canelo fights, David Benavidez, who says, it's not like I'm begging Canelo for a fight, it's something I've earned.
That's true.
You've earned a Canelo Alvarez fight about as much as John Ryder has earned a Canelo Alvarez fight, and yet for some reason, people are trashing Canelo for fighting John Ryder, his mandatory challenger.
The same as David, just with a different organization.
I feel like Canelo Alvarez, he needs these fights, you know? A big fighter like me, Benavidez said during his post-fight press conference. This is definitely a really big fight, you know? As you can see, me, Caleb Plant, was a huge fight. So I think Alvarez-Benavidez would do huge pay-per-view numbers.
Benavidez versus Plant was not a huge fight. There wasn't anything huge about it. The registered pay-per-view buys came in well under 200,000 pay-per-view buys. So what was huge about it?
Don't misunderstand me. I'd prefer the Canelo Alvarez fight this guy next, but I still have to differentiate reality from fantasy. There was nothing big, nothing huge about Benavidez versus Plant.
Let's kill that narrative right then and there.
I mean, let's just take it back to fighting, man. I want to prove myself, Benavidez said, of facing Alvarez. Canelo's proved himself, but I feel like he needs to give me the opportunity too. And it's not like I'm begging for something. I've been mandatory for the past 2 fights, so it's something I've earned, you know? And especially after this fight, I showed that I deserve to be in there with Alvarez. And, you know, I wasn't really getting hit as much. You know what I mean? My defense was good. I thought Caleb Plant was faster, so I was really countering. And I was using my head movement and defense good. I know I could get better, but I feel like the only fight that people want to see in super middleweight is me versus Canelo. So let's give it to him.
I second that motion.
Most will point out that David Benavidez is noticeably bigger than Canelo Alvarez, but Oscar really hit the nail on the head. Styles make fights, and what makes Dimitri Bivol a difficult fight for Canelo Alvarez is what makes David Benavidez an easier fight.
You have to go out there and find Dimitri Bivol, who's very light on his feet, works at the angles, and knows how to manage the distance really well. Whereas David, you don't have to do that with David. David's going to come to you.
You don't have to find him. They're both bigger guys than Canelo Alvarez, but Canelo Alvarez is no stranger to fighting bigger fighters than he is. Rocky Fielding,
Callum Smith, Caleb Plant, Billy Joe Saunders, Sergey Kovalev.
These are all taller, longer fighters than Canelo Alvarez. He's not in unfamiliar territory sharing the ring with somebody who's somewhat bigger than he is. It's the styles that determine how difficult the fight will be.
Styles make fights.
Based on styles, David Benavidez would be the easier fight, the much easier fight for Canelo than Dimitri.
So I say go for it. I say give him what he wants, and if nothing else, put him on the spot.
Make that guy an offer to cross over to the zone and do the fight.
And if he starts talking about sides of the street, he'll expose that he didn't really want it, because he ain't the A side.
Canelo's the A side.